Hi everyone, welcome back to another Doctor Who related video, and today I'm going to be talking about Doctor Who Nostalgia Infestation. Now, so we all know that Doctor Who in the past and even in the current times has always been bringing back villains of the past. Like in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and to the 90s. They were bringing back the Daleks, the Cybermen, the Sontarans, sometimes maybe the Autons. They had a lot of villains that were just so iconic that you couldn't just bin them off. So they kept coming back. And when the show was revived in 2005, they brought back the Daleks in Dalek, Bad Wolf, and Journey, and The Parting of the Ways. And honestly, the reintroduction of the Daleks is just amazing. With Doctor Who, like the modern one, like, obviously they tried to do it again, but it just doesn't work. The Last of the Time Lords and the Time War, yeah? Russell was really clever in introducing this new plot thread with The Last Great Time War, a 400-year-old battle between Time Lords and Daleks, and it was becoming endless and they were all fighting each other, so the Doctor took it upon himself to wipe them both out, Time Lords and Daleks. Not by decision, but it was like the only option he had at the time. The Time War, this new plot thread woven into the series, and what is really clever is that instead of it being like, oh, the Dalek just pops back into existence and it's like, oh, guys, this is from your childhood. Oh, and the Doctor nowadays, let's just say in Dalek, the Doctor has a massive row at this Dalek saying, I watched you all die. Every single Dalek fleet burnt in the sky. I made it happen. Having an argument, and it comes down to the Time War, which was properly introduced in, the end of the world, right? They connect it to this modern plot thread, which I think is really clever. It establishes what they do, hate anything that isn't them, they exterminate anybody who is not like them, and they are a mutated alien race who live inside mechanical casing, which is really interesting. They reintroduce these villains well. Instead of it being like, oh, they just come back and they reference an old episode they appeared in and being like, oh, this is how I survived and all this shit. They tie it into like a modern thing, like a modern plot thread that was woven into the series. They tie the villains to there, which I think is really clever. And with the Cybermen, they were from a parallel Earth. Obviously, I have my things with that one. I love the two-parter, but I don't like how that two-parter, Rise of the Cybermen and Age of Steel, they gave the Cybermen a creator. They tried to do what happened with the Daleks, where Davros is the creator of all the Daleks. They tried to do it here, but they failed to take into account that the Cybermen weren't specifically created to convert everybody in the world. No, they were created because it was a means of survival. It was a last chance of survival. Mondas fell out of orbit. They started catching illness. There was no other option remaining. And then they created cybersuits, and that was the last means of surviving. That two-parter just gives them a creator, even though that is a parallel Earth. So it excuses it, I suppose, technically. It reintroduces them. Cybermen, they want to remove emotion and turn everybody into a soulless shell like they are. The Master in Series 3, there's the plot thread with Harold Saxon, who is he? And then in Utopia, it's established, Utopia, Sound of Drums, and, Last of the Time Lords. It's said that the Master, who was very old, was in the Time War, and he used a chameleon arch to rewrite his biology and store his memories in a fob watch, and he travelled to the end of time and hid there as a human forever. which I think's really cool because it ties it back to the Time War. That is what I think's really clever. Now, with that said, I want to talk about my problem with bringing back the old villains in RTD2. Like with the Daleks and the Cybermen and the Master, they feel retextualized for the modern era. Like, the Daleks have been brought back, and they are back from the Time War. The Cybermen are from a parallel Earth, and they want to convert people and delete people who are ineligible. And in Series 3, the Master, when he was a child during the Time War, or was he a child? When he was in the Time War, he wiped his memories and hid as a human at the edge of time, or the edge of the universe, or whatever. And it ties it back to except for the Cybermen, it ties them to the Time War. It ties them to the same plot thread, which is really clever. Now, RTD2, the modern era. Now, first of all, Sutekh, the Destroyer. As we know, Sutekh first appeared in the 1950s, 50 years ago, in the 1970s, appeared in an episode called Pyramids of Mars. In that episode, Sutekh he's an Assyrian who was imprisoned because he killed people, and the Assyrians have this moral code. Killing him would mean that they're no better than him. So they locked him away in this sort of temple for the rest of time, until one day the lock was broken, and he has these servants of death, these servants of Sutekh, these worshippers, I suppose, and they help him get freed. And he can literally just destroy the world by going blowing dust. He can literally wipe out death, wipe out life and planets within a matter of seconds. And the Doctor defeated him by casting him into a time tunnel, but in the modern era, it's retconned into being the time vortex, so that it fits the story of that episode. Anyway, so in Legend of Ruby Sunday, there's this whole thing in Series 1 of Ncuti's era. There's this old woman called Susan Triad who has been everywhere that the Doctor has landed in that series. Different planets, seemingly different times, and yeah, that's what it was. And then in the finale, it's revealed that Susan Triad was actually, servants. They were actually servants of Sutekh, or angels of death. And that Sutekh had been planting a Susan Triad everywhere that the TARDIS landed since the 70s. Which I think is a bit of a in itself. So, and then after a long time, they arrive on Earth. There's this really cool spectacle. It's when the Doctor and Mel are confronting Susan Triad, who has now fully become a servant of death. She does this. They all run out. The Doctor boards Mel's Vespa, and they all run away. And there's this big sandstorm that's wiping everyone out, and it's chasing them. It's so fucking cool. But the thing is, Doctor Who has fallen into a nostalgia pit hole recently. It's no surprise there. Unlike the Daleks and the Cybermen and the Master, who had been recurring villains in the classic era, cementing them as iconic within the Doctor Who stratosphere, Sutekh had only been in one story from 50 years ago. And there was a quote on the Whoniverse show that Stephen Moffat said, which I actually agree with. The person who runs the show asked Moffat what classic villains he would like to return, and he replied with, it would have to be a classic villain where the idea is so good that it's worth bringing them back. Sutekh, he can literally just dust a planet, and in a matter of minutes and seconds, everything would be dead. That is such an interesting concept, and I feel like it's underutilised a bit there, as, yeah, Sutekh dusted the world and every other planet, And I think it's a little bit flimsy, that whole thing. It's like, in the Flux, the whole thing was that the Flux was destroying planets and wiping out all life in the universe. Well, wiped out half the universe. But the thing is, now that I think about it, the planets that were destroyed by the Flux, they might have already been destroyed by Sutekh. So the planets that the Flux destroyed were already destroyed. It's fucking weird. But anyway, Sutekh is such a cool idea, but it's underestimated in that finale, because it falls, instead of it being, the Doctor just gives a simple description of what Sutekh is. Instead, he tells an entire fucking origin, saying stuff like, a long time ago, in the England of 1911, Sutekh had been bound and imprisoned for all of eternity, but then he rose again and I defeated him. I cast you into the time vortex that sent you forward to your own death. Like, it's literally just regurgitated lore. It's a regurgitated thing from the classic era. I love Sutekh and stuff like that, but the thing is, he's underused here. They could have really used him here. They could have really retextualized him. Like, yeah, you can say, oh, he survived by clinging onto the TARDIS. But it didn't have to be from 70 years ago. 50 years ago, it could have literally just been that Sutekh never went to his death and he's been falling through the vortex for all this time, because the vortex is a tunnel that is the past, the present, and the future. It's uncertain that Sutekh just doesn't go to his death and he's just falling through time forever. And it's only recently he's clung to the TARDIS and he comes to the present and he wipes out everything again. That would make more sense, because saying that he landed on the TARDIS 50 years ago tells me, why the fuck did we need the Susan Triad shit in the first place? Because if he can just dust the world himself, why didn't he just land on Earth when the TARDIS did very first, and then just dust them then? Because that just tells me, why the fuck has he been waiting for all this time? If he had clung onto the TARDIS recently, then I'd be like, okay. But instead, they say it was from 50 years ago, he's been on the TARDIS for 50 years, and then there's this whole Susan Triad shit. That is flammable, in my opinion. And they should have done it where, yes, the vortex is a big tunnel, a big wormhole vortex that literally has loads of aspects. It's, as David Tennant said, it's a big ball of wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey, except it's a big tunnel of past and present and future events. Meaning that Sutekh never went to his death and he's been falling for all this time. At one moment he's in the past, one moment he's in the future, one moment he's in the present. It's wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey shit. Right? He clung onto the TARDIS recently, and you know what would have been cooler than just being like, oh guys, it's an old woman, don't you want to know who this is? It's like, constantly showing me the same old woman isn't going to fucking invest me. Have it where the Doctor and Ruby board the TARDIS, they depart in the TARDIS, and then pan slowly to the left or right and show the world is now barren. Wouldn't that just be fucking cooler? It would signal that everywhere they land and when they leave, everything dies. That's just fucking brilliant. I'd prefer that instead of it being like, oh guys, it's the same old lady. It's like, well, it's not going to investigate. It's not going to invest me because I don't know who the fuck she is. Showing us every world that they land on and then leave is dying would be so much fucking cooler. But anyway, I digress. Sutekh had it was a missed opportunity. He just sat around in Unit Tower all day. The Doctor defeated him by putting on a dog lead and dragging him into the vortex, and he gets disintegrated by the vortex. What a fucking waste of opportunity. Now, sorry for dilly-dallying. Season 2, the Rani and Omega. The Rani is a mad time lady from the 1970s, 80s. She comes from episodes like The Mark of the Rani and The Time of the Rani. The Time and the Rani. The Rani is a scientist, a mad woman scientist who doesn't care about life. She only cares about experimentation. She doesn't care about the lives of the people she's experimenting on. She only cares about the data and the knowledge she'll receive from that. That is a really cool idea. I really fucking like that. It's a cool concept. Except, a lot of people say she's not a good character because she's appeared in 2 bad stories. I really like the idea. But in the Wish World and the Reality War, I didn't get a sense of that mad scientist doesn't care about anybody as long as she's got the analysis, the analytics and all that. I didn't get a sense of that. She's felt more like a witch, if you think about it, like a witch. Unlike in Utopia, where they reveal that Professor Yana is actually the Master. That was fucking clever. But the Rani doesn't get that kind of episode. Instead, it's tacked on at the end of a really, really messy episode, the Interstellar Song Contest. I am not going to talk about that, as I'm not going to talk about that Israel glorifying piece of shit. So basically, Mrs. Flood, who is also another old woman who we see being like, oh, I'm an old woman, it's the same one. It's like, why the fuck are you doing the same thing again, Russell? Do something else. And then she bi-generates into the Rani, and to be honest, if you look at Mrs. Flood from the past and the shit she does, she stares into the camera and she fucking, at the end of the church on Ruby Road, she stares into the camera and she says, whoa, never seen a TARDIS before. She fucking fourth wall breaks, yeah? And in the Empire, in The Legend of Ruby Sunday, she says this weird shit about, he shall storm the gates of his kingdom. Like, what the actual fuck is that? It's like, she's clearly not the Rani. The Rani never had the ability to fourth wall break, or she never used to say stuff like, he shall break down the gates of his heavenly kingdom. Never said shit like that. Now that's the thing, you see, if you're coming up with a mystery and a sort of character that's meant to keep us on board and keep us intrigued, you should have the idea of you should have an idea of how they start off and how they end immediately in your mind. Because with this one, it kind of feels like Russell comes up with these really cool concepts, like this weird, strange woman who can stare into the camera and fourth wall break, and this woman who seems to be following the Doctor around and says shit like he shall storm the heavenly gates of his kingdom. But he doesn't think of who they are going to end up being until later down the line. And that's what it feels like with the Rani, or Mrs. Flood, when she bi-generates into the Rani. She's clearly not the fucking Rani. And the thing is, Russell didn't even have to make Mrs. Flood a classic villain. Like, for all we know, like, they could have literally, I may sound mad here, but you could have wrote her as an original fucking villain, Russell. You could have wrote her as an original fucking villain. She didn't have to be a classic villain. Bloody hell. But yeah, Rani doesn't feel like, she feels out of character, mischaracterised, and the fucking exposition in the Reality War, oh, we're fertile. Fucking hell, I'll talk about the Time Lords and that shit in the next time. But yeah, she doesn't feel right, and Mrs. Flood has been hyped up as this big villain. She becomes subservient when the new Rani comes out, and then at the end, when her Rani, or the other Rani gets eaten by Omega, we'll get to Omega now. We will get to fucking Omega. Okay, that is the end of my rant for the Rani. She doesn't feel like herself, and she just feels pointless, to be honest. The only thing she does is set up the plot. Or she gets Conrad she uses Conrad's mind, and she wants Conrad because he's got these hateful ideas of, like, different shit. They want him to power the wish world with his bigotry and his right-wing, far-right ideology. She's just setting up the plot. She's just setting up the pieces. She doesn't feel like a character of her own. She's just placing the pieces. Conrad, really big bigot. His mind's gonna power the wish world. And we need to bring back Omega. She's gonna be a character who brings back Omega. We need to establish that when the Master genetically exploded Gallifrey, that expanded throughout time and space, killing all Time Lords in the process, which I think is just fucking shit. It obliterates the chance to bring back the Time Lords. It's revealed we need the Rani to explain that the Time Lords are now sterile and they cannot give birth, and they need to establish that bi-generation is a last-ditch attempt at reproduction. She's literally just a plot device. Like, we get the Wish Baby who gives us this wish world that's powered by Conrad, who is a bigot and has these far-right ideas. And we need to establish that the Time Lords are sterile and that bi-generation is a last-ditch attempt at reproduction. And now we need to find a way to bring back Omega. She's just a fucking plot device. She doesn't feel like her own character. She's just there to put the pieces. She's just there to place the jigsaw pieces, moving the plot along. She doesn't feel like her own fucking entity. She's just there to fucking set things up for the finale. You may as well have just had Conrad as the villain, which arguably that would have been a better fucking choice. Now let's get on to Omega. Omega, Lord Omega, the creator of time travel in the Doctor Who stratosphere. Now, let's get on to him. In the very first episode he appeared in 2 episodes. The first one was the 10-year anniversary of Classic Who, and that was the 3 Doctors. Lord Omega is he is established to be one of the very first Time Lords, which arguably I don't think is true anymore. Technically it's the Doctor, in my opinion, because of the Timeless Child. So I don't think Omega is the first Time Lord. Hell, they say it in the Reality War. The Doctor said, Omega, last of the very first Time Lord. It's like, no he fucking isn't, Doctor. You're the very first Time Lord now. You're the reason behind the fucking regeneration process. No, you're the fucking first Time Lord, not Omega, not anymore. So basically, he's established to be the very first Time Lord and the founder of time travel in the Doctor Who universe, the creator of the time vortex and time travel. He used the hand of Omega to make a sun go supernova. And rumour had it that he died in the supernova, but actually he was picked up by an antimatter black hole. As he went through the antimatter black hole, he ended up in an antimatter universe, where all of his body, went, and the only thing that survived was his consciousness, because he was betrayed by the Time Lords, Rassilon and Barusa. He was betrayed by the Time Lords, and he's been trapped in there, and everything in that antimatter universe is created by his mind. Conrad. Basically, he's there, he wants revenge on the Time Lord, the Doctor meets him, and he doesn't like the Time Lords, and since he's the creator of the Time Lords, he doesn't want to be a legend or a hero, he wants to be a god, because he created time travel. Fair enough. Omega in his antimatter universe just goes away. And then he comes back in the Arc of Infinity, he possesses a body, and he gets shot by the Doctor, and it's presumed that his consciousness went back into an antimatter universe. But instead, I think they've retconned that into being that actually Omega's consciousness ended up in the Underverse, which is a universe beneath reality. Okay, now we can get to that then. So the Rani wants to open up the Underverse, or crack open the Earth, so that Omega can come out of it. Now, Omega had a really cool design. The Arc of Infinity design of Omega, I'm not very keen. I don't think it's as good. the Omega in the Three Doctors with the big golden helmet looks so much cooler. He has this big helmet and he looks so pompous and posh and he looks powerful. And he doesn't have a body, as I've said, because of the antimatter universe. In the reality war, he's a big husk. He is a big skeleton who crawls out of this tomb in the universe. And he has a fucking body. A body. Even though he doesn't have a fucking body. Sure, he possessed a body in the Arc of Infinity. But his consciousness fucking left that body. And now he doesn't have a fucking body. What the actual fucking shit? Omega doesn't have a fucking body. Oh my god. And then when he comes back, he's not as clever, he's not as intimidating or as annoyed and angry as he was in that. Instead, he's reduced to this typical monster who wants to eat everything. You know what his line is when he comes out of the tomb? He says, "I will become the god of time, with time lords to feast upon." So that means he's a cannibal then. He wants to eat time lords. He's a fucking cannibal. What the fuck? And so he eats the Rani, and in Wishworld he's said to be the most terrifying Time Lord of all, the Mad God, the tyrant of all tyrants. And then he comes back as this husk. He crawls out and he's like, "Ugh." It's not Omega, is it? It's just a big fucking monster. It's just a big monster. It's just a monster. That's not, I'm sorry. That is not Omega. So he comes out of the tomb. And then you know the Vindicator device, because there's this whole plot line in Series 2 where the TARDIS cannot land on May 24th because the world keeps ending and restarting on that day and time just messes up. It's really interesting. And this Vindicator, they travel to past and present of and different worlds, and they placed on this Vindicator which collects this sort of data from the sky, or it takes data from each sun. And then, out of fucking nowhere, because the Ranis used this Vindicator as a way to help unlock the tomb in the universe to release Omega, it's established to be a fucking weapon. When was that established? Because the Doctor just pulls it out, and he says this, the power of 1 billion supernovas. When the fuck was it established as a gun? When the fuck was it established as a gun? They establish it a few seconds before Omega gets defeated. What? When the fuck was... Oh my god. Because Omega hasn't even fully left the tomb. Most of his body is still in there. The Doctor pulls it out and it's like 1 billion supernovas. And then blue beams come out of it and it blasts him. And he's like, back into hell. And he gets back into the tomb and the door seals and that's the end of him. What a fucking way to go out. Imagine saying that. He's the Mad God. He's the tyrant of all tyrants. Ooh, he's the most terrifying Time Lord of all. And then he crawls out the tomb, not even fully out. The Doctor gets out this thing that's been in the series and it wasn't even established as a weapon until a few seconds prior. And it's like, 1 billion supernovas. And it's like, what the fuck? Omega gets underutilised there as well. Instead of expanding on what made him interesting, maybe there could have been a thing, because obviously the Doctor found out that the Time Lords lied to him recently, because he's one of the reasons behind Time Lord regeneration. He feels lied to. And Omega was betrayed by the the Time Lord, and obviously the Doctor was recently lied to by the Time Lord. They could have had an interesting back-to-back about that, and how the Doctor could be like, I understand where your hate comes from. You were lied to and betrayed by the Time Lord. So was I. I found out that my life hasn't exactly been the way I thought it was. That would have been fucking interesting. But instead, he comes out and is this big ghoul, this big skeleton husk going, I will destroy this world. I will eat every last Time Lord. And the Doctor's like, back to hell! Ah! And it's like, oh my god. This is what I like about RTD1. The Daleks and the Cybermen and the Master came back, and they were tied to the Time War. Obviously, Sutekh and Toymaker, Toymaker was a classic villain, and I thought he was brought back well. And it was established that he was a part of this modern thing, the pantheon of gods. Okay, I mean, Sutekh was, but it still wasn't fucking done right. And it's like, what happened to retextualising them for this? Like, establish what they can do and expand on what made them so interesting. Retextualise them for the modern audience. They don't fucking do anything with them. Omega, fucking defeated in 3 minutes. The Rani, she's not even used. She's just used to move the plot forward, getting pieces into place. And then Sutekh, brought back, destroyed a lot of the universe, the Doctor puts a lead on him, drags him into the vortex, and he gets released into the vortex and he just dies. It's fucking ridiculous. This is why I suggest RTD2 is a bigger mess than the Jodie era, because I actually didn't mind most of Jodie's era. But this is fucking messy. RTD2 is fucking messy. It's too reliant on what came before. It's very reliant on fan service and fan knowledge. It's a fucking mess. I think RTD2 is more of a mess than the Chibnall era. Obviously Chibnall era has some issues, but I actually quite enjoyed it, to be honest. At least Chibnall brought back the Daleks and the Cybermen and the Master and did interesting things with them, right? Like RTD before Stephen, yeah? Right? Like, at least Chibnall did a lot of original things. Sure, he did bring classic things back in, well, the second series he did. But he still did original things. It still felt like he was expanding the universe. RTD2 is just too reliant on the past. And it's a nostalgia infestation. You're bringing things back. Like, with Sutekh, you bring him back and it's like, ooh, old fans, don't you remember this from your past? Oh, you liked it, didn't you? Well, guess what? I'm gonna fucking butcher it. Right? That's what it feels like. It's key dangling, going like, oh, don't you remember this? Don't you remember this? Don't you have knowledge of this? Oh. And not only to say that the modern era, or RTD2, is meant to be a new jumping on point, but then bringing back a 50-year-old villain and then doing nothing interesting with them. It's like, God, you know what I mean? Anyway, I'm gonna go now. See ya.